What would make an entire family disappear in the middle of breakfast, leaving everything behind? 40 years ago, the Callaways vanished without a trace from Pinewood Creek. Now, journalist Lark Davies has found a photo with a chilling message scrawled on the back. "They're watching us." As she digs deeper, strange men in black cars begin following her. Some secrets were buried for a reason, and someone will do anything to keep them hidden. Everyone in Pinewood Creek still remembered the morning the Callaway family vanished. June 17th, 1983. A Friday that started like any other summer day in their small town, with dew on the grass and birdsong in the air. Sheriff Dale Monroe sipped his coffee on the front porch of the Pinewood Diner when the call came in. Marlene Jenkins, the Callaways' next-door neighbor for 8 years, was breathless on the other end of the line. "They're gone, Dale. All of them. Just gone." "Who's gone, Marlene?" Dale asked, already reaching for his hat. "The Callaways. Elias, Willa, all the children. Their beds are made, breakfast is on the table, but they're not here. Their car is gone too." Within an hour, half the town knew. By nightfall, everyone was talking about it. The Callaway house sat on Maple Street, a 2-story, white farmhouse with blue shutters and a porch swing that Elias had built himself. When Sheriff Monroe arrived, the front door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked normal, except for the breakfast. 5 plates of half-eaten scrambled eggs sat on the kitchen table, the yellow mounds congealed and cold. 5 glasses of orange juice, barely touched. The coffee pot was still warm. It looked like they had jumped up from breakfast and rushed out the door. But no one had seen them leave. "Didn't hear a thing," Marlene Jenkins insisted, wringing her hands on her apron. "Not a car starting. Not the kids shouting. Nothing." Sheriff Monroe noted the oddest details. Willa's purse still hung on the hook by the door. The family's suitcases were still in the attic. Mira's diary sat open on her nightstand, midway through an entry about a boy she liked at school. Otto's baseball mitt lay on the floor of his room, right where he dropped it after Wednesday's game. The twins' beds were made with military precision, their stuffed animals arranged in a neat row. Only the Callaway station wagon was gone. Maybe there was an emergency, someone suggested, a family member sick or hurt. But calls to Elias's mother in Florida and Willa's sister in Ohio confirmed that no one had heard from them. No relatives were ill. No one was expecting a visit. By 2, Callaways had simply disappeared. For weeks, Sheriff Monroe investigated. He called police departments in neighboring counties, checked hospital records, and interviewed everyone who knew the family. He learned nothing useful. Elias Callaway, 41, had worked at Pinewood Creek Bank for 12 years. The day before they vanished, he'd left work early, telling his boss he had a migraine. Willa, 39, taught piano lessons from their home. She'd canceled all her appointments for that Thursday, saying the twins had caught a summer cold. Mira, their oldest at 15, was a quiet girl who loved books and writing poetry. Otto, 12, played Little League and collected baseball cards. The twins, Penny and Percy, had just turned 8 the month before. They'd had a birthday party in the backyard with a chocolate cake shaped like a rocket ship. They were an ordinary family. Until they weren't. As days turned into weeks with no word, people began to talk. Some said Elias had gambling debts. Others whispered that Willa had been seen crying at the grocery store the week before. A few suggested they had joined a cult. The cruelest rumors claimed Elias had done something terrible to his family and run away. But no bodies were found. No evidence of violence, no large bank withdrawals, no notes left behind. By the end of summer, the Callaways' disappearance had become just another small-town mystery, a story told at sleepovers to scare children. Maybe they're still out there, people would say. Maybe someday they'll come back and tell us where they've been. But they never did. Lark Davies stared at the faded photograph in her hands, feeling a chill despite the stuffy attic heat. She'd come home to Pinewood Creek after 10 years away, with nothing to show for her time in the city but a layoff notice and 3 boxes of belongings. At 30, she was back in her grandmother's house, sleeping in her childhood bedroom. "Lark, did you find those Christmas ornaments yet?" Grandma May called from downstairs. "Still looking," Lark yelled back, wiping sweat from her forehead. She'd been sorting through boxes for hours, organizing decades of her grandmother's life into piles of keep, donate, and throw away. The photograph had fallen from an envelope marked Town Picnic. 1983. It showed a man with kind eyes and a worried smile, his arm around a pretty woman with dark hair pulled back in a braid. 3 children stood in front of them. A teenage girl looking bored, a boy with a baseball cap, and identical twin girls in matching sundresses. The Calloway family. Lark knew them from the stories, from the whispers, from the way people still glanced at their old house when they drove past it on Maple Street. She turned the photo over. Written in faded blue ink were the words, "They're watching us." Lark frowned. The handwriting was shaky, hurried. She squinted at the photo again, noticing what she'd missed before. Elias Calloway wasn't just smiling nervously. He was looking at something beyond the camera's frame, his eyes wide with what looked like fear. "Find anything interesting?" Her grandmother appeared at the top of the attic stairs, leaning on her cane. Lark held up the photo. The Calloways. This must have been taken right before they disappeared. Grandma May's smile faded. She hobbled forward to take the photo, her fingers trembling slightly. "Where did you find this?" "In an envelope with the town picnic photos. I forgot I had this." Her grandmother stared at the image for a long moment. Such a shame what happened. Or didn't happen. Not knowing is the hardest part. "What do you think happened to them?" Lark asked. Her grandmother handed the photo back. "That family had secrets, Lark. This town has secrets too." "What kind of secrets?" But her grandmother was already turning away. "Never mind all that. It was 40 years ago. Some things are better, left buried." At the top of the stairs, she paused. "Though I always wondered about those children, especially the twins. There was something different about them." After her grandmother left, Lark sat back on her heels, studying the photo. As a journalist, unemployed now, but still a journalist at heart, she knew a story when she saw one. The Calloway mystery had haunted Pinewood Creek for decades. Maybe it was time someone finally discovered the truth. Lark tucked the photo into her pocket and continued digging through the boxes. At the bottom of one, she found something odd. A child's drawing on yellowed construction paper, crude stick figures of 2 small girls holding hands, surrounded by strange symbols. In the corner, a shaky signature, Penny and Percy C. The Calloway twins had been friends with her mother. She'd forgotten that. Lark compared the symbols in the drawing to the back of the photograph. The same jagged circle appeared in both places. Outside, thunder rumbled across the summer sky. The attic window rattled in a sudden gust of wind. Lark shivered again, unable to shake the feeling that she'd just opened a door that had been locked for 40 years, and something was waiting on the other side. Lark woke early the next morning, the photograph and drawing on her nightstand. Rain pattered against her bedroom window, the same window she'd stared out of as a teenager, dreaming of leaving Pinewood Creek behind. Now she was back, and the town's biggest mystery had landed in her lap. After breakfast with Grandma May, Lark grabbed her notebook and an umbrella. "I'm going into town," she said. "Need anything?" Her grandmother looked up from her crossword puzzle. "Stopping by the bank?" Maybe. Why? It's where Elias Callaway worked, you know. Same building, different name now. Grandma May returned to her puzzle. If you're going to dig up old bones, you might as well start there. Outside, Pinewood Creek looked smaller than Lark remembered. Main Street stretched just 6 blocks, with faded storefronts and a single traffic light. Most shops were the same: the hardware store, the diner, Wilson's Pharmacy. The movie theater had closed, replaced by a discount furniture store. Lark headed for the Pinewood Creek Community Library, where Ms. Josephine Barrett had worked since before Lark was born. If anyone knew the town's secrets, it was Josie. The library smelled like old books and lemon polish. Ms. Barrett sat behind the front desk, her silver hair in its usual bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. "Well, well," she said, looking up. "Lark Davies, heard you were back in town." "News travels fast," Lark said. "Always has." Ms. Barrett smiled. "What brings you to my little kingdom of books?" Lark placed the photograph on the desk. "The Callaways." Ms. Barrett's smile faded. She glanced around the empty library before picking up the photo. "Where did you find this?" "In Grandma's attic." "Turn it over." The librarian's eyebrows rose at the message. "They're watching us," she read quietly. "Elias was always a bit high-strung, but in those last months—" She shook her head. "He changed." "How?" Lark pulled out her notebook. "He stopped coming to town council meetings, started checking out strange books, history of government experiments, conspiracy theories. Once I saw him in the reference section at midnight. I'd forgotten my sweater and came back to get it. Found him hunched over old newspapers, muttering to himself. What was he looking for? Never said. But that same week, he asked me how to send anonymous letters to newspapers." Ms. Barrett handed the photo back. "People talk about how they vanished overnight, but the truth is, they were vanishing for months before they actually left. Pulling away. Becoming shadows." Lark scribbled in her notebook. "What about Willa?" "Lovely woman. Taught half the town's children piano, including yours truly." Ms. Barrett tapped the desk thoughtfully. About 3 months before they disappeared, she stopped letting the twins play outside unsupervised. Started canceling lessons. Said the children were sick, but nobody ever saw a doctor visit. And nobody thought this was strange? Of course, we did. But what could we do? Sheriff asked some questions, but Elias said everything was fine, just family stress. Ms. Barrett leaned forward. "You should talk to Ruby Winters. She was Willa's star student. Last person to have a lesson before they left." Outside the library, Lark checked her notes. Ruby Winters. The name was vaguely familiar. Before looking, for her, Lark decided to visit her old elementary school. Pinewood Creek Elementary looked exactly the same. Red brick building, playground with rusty swings, flagpole where they'd gathered every morning for the Pledge of Allegiance. Summer school was in session, so the doors were unlocked. In the office, the secretary recognized her immediately. "Lark Davies, class of 2008, right? You wrote for the school newspaper." "That's right," Lark smiled. "Is Ms. Finch still teaching? 4th grade?" 35 years and counting. She's in room 1 to 12. Ms. Finch was erasing her chalkboard when Lark knocked on the open door. The teacher turned, and her face lit up. "Lark! What a wonderful surprise!" She hurried over to hug her former student. At 65, Ms. Finch was smaller than Lark remembered, her brown hair now streaked with gray. After catching up, Lark showed her the photograph. "The Callaways," Ms. Finch whispered. "I had Otto in my class." "What was he like?" "Bright boy. Loved baseball and science. But that last month, She sat down at her desk. He changed, started falling asleep in class, drawing instead of doing his work. Ms. Finch opened her bottom drawer and pulled out an old teacher's notebook. I kept this all these years. Never knew why I couldn't throw it away. She flipped through the pages until she found what she was looking for. Here, it was a child's drawing, a jagged circle with lines radiating from it, repeated dozens of times across the page. The same symbol from the twins' drawing and the back of the photograph. Otto drew this constantly, Ms. Finch said. When I asked him about it, he just whispered, "Dad says they're getting closer." Lark felt goosebumps rise on her arms. "Did you tell anyone?" I tried talking to Elias at the spring parent-teacher conference. He seemed terrified, grabbed the drawing, and said Otto had an overactive imagination. Ms. Finch touched the symbol in the notebook. The day before they disappeared, Otto told me, "If we're not here tomorrow, don't look for us." I thought he was being dramatic. Children that age often are, but they never came back. As Lark left the school, rain began falling harder. She hurried toward the bank, turning over everything she'd learned. The Callaways had been scared of something, or someone. They're watching us. They're getting closer. Who were they? At Pinewood Creek First National, formerly Pinewood Creek Bank, Lark asked about employment records from the 1980s. The young manager seemed confused by her request. "Those would be in storage in the basement, if they exist at all," he said. "Why do you need them?" Lark thought quickly. "Research for a book on small-town banking history." He looked doubtful, but agreed to let her check the archives the next day. As Lark turned to leave, she noticed an elderly security guard watching her from across the lobby. When their eyes met, he quickly looked away. At the diner for lunch, Lark overheard snippets of conversation. People had noticed her asking questions. Davy's girl, asking about the Callaways. Some things better left alone. Bank won't. Like that. Small towns and their secrets. Lark ate her sandwich, reviewing her notes. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions about the Callaways. For your safety." Lark stared at the message, heart pounding. Someone was watching her, just like someone had watched the Callaways. When she looked up, she noticed a black car parked across the street, its windows tinted too dark to see inside. As she watched, it pulled away from the curb and drove slowly past the diner. She couldn't see the driver, but she felt their eyes on her. That night, as Lark sorted through her notes at her grandmother's kitchen table, she heard May talking on the phone in the next room. "She's asking questions." I know. "No, I haven't told her anything. What should I do?" When May returned to the kitchen, Lark pretended to be focused on her notebook. "Who were you talking to?" Lark asked casually. "Just an old friend," May said too quickly. "You should drop this Callaway business, Lark. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved." "Is that what your friend thinks too?" Her grandmother didn't answer. Later, as Lark got ready for bed, she noticed the Callaway photo was missing from her nightstand. The twins' drawing was still there, but the photograph was gone. She found it in the kitchen trash, torn into pieces. Lark carefully gathered the fragments and taped them back together. Something about this family's disappearance still mattered to people in Pinewood Creek, enough that 40 years later, they were still trying to bury the truth. As she turned off her light, a car engine rumbled outside. Lark peeked through the curtains to see the same black car from earlier parked across the street. It sat there, engine idling, for nearly an hour before driving away. Tomorrow, she would visit the bank archives and track down Ruby Winters. Someone in this town knew what had happened to the Callaways, and someone didn't want her to find out. Lark tucked the repaired photograph under her pillow, along with the twins' drawing. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away old secrets and uncovering new ones. The basement of Pinewood Creek First National smelled like dust and forgotten paper. Lark followed the young manager, Trevor, down a narrow staircase. Morning. Light barely penetrated the small windows near the ceiling. "Archives are along that back wall," Trevor said, pointing to rows of metal shelving. "Employee records should be in those boxes marked by decade. I have a meeting, so you'll be on your own. Just don't make a mess." After he left, Lark pulled out her phone to use as a flashlight. The basement was bigger than she expected, stretching under the entire bank. Besides the archives, there were old desks, broken chairs, and outdated computers piled in corners. She found the box labeled Employees 1980-1989 and carried it to a wobbly table. Inside were hundreds of personnel files, organized alphabetically. Callaway, Elias, was near the front. The file was thin, just basic information about his hiring in 1971, salary history, and performance reviews. Everything normal until 1982, when his previously excellent reviews suddenly mentioned distraction and concerning behavior. His final review, dated May 1983, noted, "Elias has been working late without authorization. Found in records room after hours. Claims to be catching up on work, but suspicious activity noted. Recommend monitoring." What had Elias been looking for in the bank's records? Lark searched for more boxes. Along the far wall, she found what she needed. Financial records, 1940-1949. If Elias had been interested in old accounts, this was where he would have looked. The box was heavy, filled with ledgers and account statements. Many pages were stuck, together from years of dampness. Lark carefully separated them, scanning for anything unusual. In a ledger from 1947, she found pencil marks beside certain transactions, tiny stars that would be easy to miss if you weren't looking for them. All the marked transactions involved an account for Pinewood Research Initiative. Lark had never heard of it. The transactions showed large deposits coming from US Gov Spec and withdrawals going to various individuals and something called facility. 13. On the last page of the ledger was a slip of paper that had been partially burned. The edges were black and crumbling, but she could still read some of the writing. Funds transfer approved. Project Echo, Special Subjects Program, authorized by... The rest was burned away. But in the corner was a hand-drawn symbol, Thine Poissy, same jagged circle from Otto's drawings and the twins' artwork. Lark's heart raced. This was it, what Elias had discovered. But what was Project Echo? And what did it have to do with the Callaways? She took photos of everything with her phone. As she slid the ledger back into the box, she knocked over a stack of folders. Papers scattered across the floor, and something metallic clattered against the concrete. Kneeling to gather the mess, Lark found a small key with a tag that read SR2. Security Room 2? She pocketed it, unsure why she felt it might be important. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Lark quickly shoved the papers back into their folders. Finding everything okay? It was the elderly security guard she'd noticed yesterday, not Trevor. His nameplate read Howard Martinez. "Just finishing up," Lark said, trying to sound casual. "Lots of interesting banking history down here." Howard nodded slowly, watching her. "Interesting indeed, especially when you look in the right places." His eyes flicked to the box of 1940s records. "You might want to be careful about what you take an interest in, Miss Davies. Some old accounts. They still have people watching over them. Lark froze. How did he know her name? And was that a warning or a threat? "I'm just doing research," she said. Howard stepped closer. "Your grandmother May was my wife's best friend, back in the day. I knew your mother too." His voice softened. "The Calloways weren't the only family affected by what happened here." "What do you mean? What happened?" Howard glanced toward the stairs. "Not here. Meet me at Wilson's Pharmacy at closing time, 6 o'clock. Ask for something for headaches. I'll find you." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away. Lark gathered her things quickly, her mind racing. She needed to find Ruby Winters before meeting Howard. Outside, the rain had stopped, but dark clouds still hung over Pinewood Creek. Lark checked her phone. 3 missed calls from her grandmother and a text from the same unknown number as yesterday. Last warning, go back to the city. A chill ran down her spine as she noticed the black car again, parked half a block away. This time, she pulled out her phone and took a picture. The car immediately started its engine and drove off, but not before she caught the first 3 letters of the license plate, ECH Echo, like Project Echo from the burned paper. Ruby Winters lived in a small blue house on Sycamore Street. According to the library records Lark had checked that morning, Ruby had left Pinewood Creek for college in 1984, returning 20 years later as Dr. Ruby Winters to open the town's only medical practice. A brass plaque beside her door read, "Family, medicine, by appointment only." But Lark rang the bell anyway. A woman in her late 50s opened the door, her dark hair streaked with silver, glasses perched on her nose. "We're closed on Wednesdays," she began, then paused. "Wait, Lark Davies? May's granddaughter?" "That's me," Lark smiled. "I was hoping I could talk to you about Willa Calloway." Ruby's face changed. "Come inside." The house was neat and simply furnished. Ruby led Lark to a sitting room that doubled as a waiting area for patients. "Tea?" Ruby offered. "No, thank you. I won't take much of your time." Ruby sat across from Lark, hands folded in her lap. "I was wondering if someone would ever ask about them again. It's been so long." "You were Willa's piano student?" "For 8 years. She was more than my teacher. She was like a second mother to me." Ruby's eyes grew distant. "My last lesson with her was the day before they disappeared." "What happened during that lesson?" "It wasn't normal. Usually we'd work on pieces I was preparing for recitals, but that day she seemed distracted, kept looking out the window." Ruby leaned forward. In the middle of the lesson, she suddenly stopped and said, "Ruby, if anything happens to us, I need you to keep something safe." She gave me a small music box. "Do you still have it?" Lark asked, trying to keep the excitement from her voice. Ruby nodded and left the room. When she returned, she held a wooden box about the size of her palm, carved with tiny flowers. "I've kept it locked away all these years, like she asked," Ruby said. "I never showed it to anyone, not even the sheriff. I was only 16. I was scared." She placed the box in Lark's hands. It was lighter than Lark expected, with a small keyhole in the front. "She gave me the key separately," Ruby continued, handing Lark a tiny silver key. "She said, 'Don't open it unless we're gone more than a month. And if anyone asks about us, don't tell them about this.'" With trembling fingers, Lark inserted the key. The lock turned easily. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a larger key. The note contained just 5 words. "The truth is in the water." "I never understood what it meant," Ruby said. "There's a winding mechanism on the bottom. It plays a song. At least it's supposed to." Lark turned the box over and found a small metal crank. She wound it gently. Instead of music, the box made a series of clicks and pauses. Click, click, click. Pause. Click. Pause. Click, click. "It's always done that," Ruby said. "I thought it was broken." But Lark recognized the pattern. It's not broken. It's Morse code. Her father had taught her Morse code when she was a child, one of his many hobbies. "It's giving us coordinates." She grabbed her phone and recorded the sequence, then used an app to translate the clicks. Freitur. 87.92 degree N. 110.5371 degree W, she read, aloud. "That's not in Pinewood Creek." "No," Ruby agreed. "That's Pinewood Lake, about 15 miles north of town." Lark remembered something her grandmother had mentioned yesterday. The lake had been expanded in 1985 through a government project. What if something had been hidden there before the expansion? Something now underwater? As if reading her thoughts, Ruby said, "The lake used to be much smaller. There were cabins along the eastern shore before they flooded that area." The door knocker suddenly banged loudly, making both women jump. Ruby went to the window and peeked through the curtains. "It's your grandmother," she said, sounding relieved. "And she looks upset." Grandma May burst into the house as soon as Ruby opened the door. "Lark, I've been calling you for hours." "My phone was on silent. I'm sorry. Someone broke into the house while I was at my bridge game," May said. "They tore your room apart." Lark's stomach dropped. "The photograph? The drawing? Gone," May said grimly, "along with your notebook." Ruby closed the front door quickly and locked it. "You're being followed," she said. "Both of you should stay here tonight." Through the window, Lark spotted the black car driving slowly past. Ruby's house. "What did you find at the bank?" May asked, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. "How did you know I went to the bank?" "Because that's where it all started 40 years ago," May said. With whatever Elias Calloway found in those records, Ruby looked at her watch. "It's almost 6. Weren't you supposed to meet Howard at the pharmacy?" "How did you know that?" Lark asked, startled. "He called me after you left the bank." "Howard worked security there even back then." "He knows things." May shook her head. "Howard needs to keep his mouth shut. He's already lost enough." "What do you mean?" Lark asked. Before May could answer, Ruby's phone rang. She answered, listened briefly, then turned pale. "There was a fire at the bank," she said after hanging up. "The basement archives are burning." Lark felt sick. All that evidence, gone. And Howard Martinez had been in that basement. "We need to go to the lake," she said, clutching the music box. "Tomorrow, first thing." "No," May said firmly. "You need to stop this, Lark, right now, before you end up like the Callaways, or worse." But Lark was already planning. The coordinates, the key from the music box, the message. The truth is in the water. Whatever the Callaways had been running from, the answer was waiting at Pinewood Lake. And someone was desperate to keep her from finding it. Dawn broke over Pinewood Creek, pale sunlight filtering through the blinds in Ruby's guest bedroom. Lark hadn't slept much. She'd spent hours examining the music box, trying to decipher any other messages it might contain. The larger key from inside the box was old and rusted at the edges. A small number had been etched into the metal, 24601. Lark had no idea what it might open. Voices drifted up from downstairs, Ruby and Grandma May talking in hushed tones. Lark crept to the staircase to listen. "Can't let her go to the lake," May was saying. "It's too dangerous." "She's not a child anymore, May," Ruby replied. "And maybe it's time the truth came out." "After all these years?" It would destroy the town. The town? Or just the people who kept the secret? Silence followed. Then May spoke again, her voice breaking. I lost my daughter to this. I won't lose my granddaughter, too. Lark's breath caught. Her mother had died in a car accident when Lark was just 7 years old. What did that have to do with the Calloways? She stepped into the kitchen. What happened to Mom? Both women turned, startled. May's face paled. Lark! Don't lie to me, Lark said. You just said you lost Mom to this. To what? What are you talking about? Ruby glanced at May, then back to Lark. Your mother was friends with the Calloway twins. I know that. I found a drawing they made. It was more than that, Ruby said, carefully. They were in a special program together at school, a gifted program. May shook her head. Ruby, stop! She needs to know, May. Ruby turned back to Lark. After the Calloways disappeared, your mother became obsessed with finding out what happened to her friends. She kept saying the twins had told her they were different, that they could do things other kids couldn't. What things? Lark asked. She said they could read each other's thoughts, know things they shouldn't be able to know. Ruby poured herself more coffee. Most people thought it was just twins being close, or kids with active imaginations, but your mother believed them. So what happened to her? Really? May stood up abruptly. She died in a car accident. End of story. But was it really an accident? Lark pressed. Or did it have something to do with the Calloways? Before May could respond, Ruby's doorbell rang. They all froze. Ruby went to the window and peeked out. It's Teo, she said, relieved. He's alone. She opened the door to a tall, broad-shouldered man around Lark's age. He had olive skin, dark curly hair, and wore a Pinewood Lake Ranger jacket. Teo! Lark exclaimed, recognizing her childhood friend. I didn't know you were back in town. Teodoro Vasquez grinned. Could say the same about you, city girl. His smile faded as he noticed their serious expressions. Everything okay? Not exactly, Ruby said. Howard Martinez is in the hospital. Smoke inhalation from the bank fire. Teo whistled low. That's not why I'm here, though. May called me last night, said you might need help at the lake. He looked at Lark. I'm the head ranger now. If you're planning to search for something, you want me along. May sighed, defeated. If you're determined to do this, at least be careful. Teo knows the lake better than anyone. What exactly are we looking for? Teo asked. Lark showed him the music box and explained about the coordinates. According to Ruby, there used to be cabins in that area before the lake expansion. Teo nodded. My dad talked about those. Government bought everyone out in '84, started flooding the area in '85. Said it was for water conservation or something. He studied the coordinates. This would put us right over what used to be the eastern shore. Definitely underwater now. Can we get to it? Lark asked. I've got diving gear at the ranger station, Teo said. Used to do underwater recovery. But we'd need a boat. I know someone with a boat, Ruby offered. Give me an hour. While they waited, Lark told Teo everything she'd discovered. His expression grew more troubled with each detail. The symbol you described, he said finally. I've seen it before. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of a faded sign. The jagged circle was barely visible beneath layers of paint. It's at an old property on the north side of the lake. A chain-link fence surrounds the whole place. Government land. No trespassing. What's it called? The sign just says, Pinewood Research Facility. It's been abandoned for decades. Pinewood. Research Initiative. The name from the bank ledgers. Lark's pulse quickened. By mid-morning, They were on the lake. Ruby's friend had loaned them a small fishing boat with an outboard motor. The water was calm, deep blue against the surrounding pine forest. Under different circumstances, it would have been beautiful. Teo navigated while Lark checked the coordinates on her phone. They were getting close. "There's something else you should know," Teo said, cutting the engine. "My dad worked construction on the lake expansion project. He always said they were in an awful hurry to flood this part, made them work double shifts. Why the rush? He didn't know. But one night, he saw men in suits loading boxes onto trucks from one of the cabins. When they spotted him watching, they threatened to have him deported if he told anyone." The boat drifted to a stop. Teo checked the GPS. "We're here." Lark looked down at the dark water. Somewhere below was whatever Willa Calloway had wanted Ruby to find. "I'll go down first," Teo said, pulling on his wetsuit. "The water's about 30 feet deep here. Used to be the shore, so we might find foundations, remains of cabins." "Look for anything locked," Lark said, thinking of the key. "Maybe a safe or a strongbox." Teo fitted his diving mask and oxygen tank. "If I'm not back in 15 minutes, get help." He winked, trying to lighten the mood, then backward rolled into the lake. Lark watched his bubbles, anxiety twisting her stomach. The music box sat in her lap, the note visible inside. The truth is in the water. 10 minutes passed. The surface of the lake remained still except for Teo's occasional bubbles. Lark scanned the shoreline, unable to shake the feeling they were being watched. Near the northern shore, almost hidden among the trees, she spotted the glint of sunlight on metal. Binoculars. Someone was watching them. Before she could process this, the water beside the boat erupted. Teo surfaced, gasping and pulling off his mask. "Found something," he panted, lifting a metal box into the boat. It was about the size of a shoebox, rusted but intact. A padlock secured the lid. The number 24601 was stamped on its side. Lark's hands trembled as she took the larger key from the music box and fitted it into the lock. It turned with a grinding sound, the mechanism reluctant after years underwater. Inside, protected by a waterproof seal, were stacks of papers, photographs, and a small leather journal. Lark lifted out a newspaper clipping about a government project called ECHO. The article, dated 1947, described it as an initiative to identify and develop gifted children for the advancement of national security. The photographs showed men in suits watching children through one-way glass. Another showed the Calloway house with a van parked across the street. The final photo made Lark gasp. Her own childhood home, also under surveillance. The journal was Elias Calloway's. The first entry was dated 6 months before their disappearance. Found something strange in the old accounts today. Money from a government project flowing through our small bank in the 1940s. Why here? And why is it starting again? The last entry, dated the night before they vanished, was short and chilling. "They know I've seen the files. They know about the tests. They've been watching us for months, ever since the twins started showing signs. We're leaving tonight. If anything happens to us, the proof is in the lake cabin. God help us all." Lark looked up at Teo, her heart pounding. "We need to get back to shore. Now." As Teo started the engine, Lark noticed a black speedboat cutting across the lake toward them. 2 men in dark suits stood at the bow. "Go!" she shouted, clutching the metal box. "They're coming!" The boat's engine roared to life as Teo pushed it to full speed. Water sprayed around them as they cut across the lake toward the southern shore. "Who are those guys?" Teo shouted over the engine. "I don't know." Lark clutched the metal box to her chest. Inside was evidence of government experiments, surveillance, and whatever had made the Callaways run. She wasn't going to lose it now. The black speedboat gained on them quickly. It was bigger and faster than their small fishing boat. One of the weak men raised something to his shoulder. A camera? A weapon? Lark couldn't tell. Head for that cove. She pointed to a narrow inlet bordered by tall pines. Their smaller boat might navigate the shallow water better. Teo veered sharply. The sudden turn sent Lark tumbling against the side of the boat. The music box slipped from her pocket and skidded across the deck. No! She lunged for it as it teetered on the edge. Her fingers closed around it just as it was about to fall into the lake. The speedboat was 50 yards behind them now, close enough that Lark could see the men clearly. Dark suits, sunglasses, expressionless faces. One spoke into a radio. Teo guided their boat into the cove, where the water grew shallow. Stones and fallen trees lurked just beneath the surface. He navigated carefully while Lark kept watch behind them. The speedboat slowed at the entrance to the cove, unable to follow safely. The men seemed to argue before turning away. "They're leaving," Lark said, relief flooding her voice. "Don't count on it," Teo replied grimly. "They'll just find another way to come after us. We need to get off the lake." He steered toward a small, rocky beach. As soon as the boat touched shore, Lark jumped out, still holding the metal box and the music box. Teo quickly tied the boat to a fallen tree. "This way," he said, heading for a narrow trail that led up from the beach into the forest. "There's an old ranger cabin about half a mile through these woods. We can look through that stuff safely there." They hurried along the path, pine needles cushioning their footsteps. Lark glanced back frequently, but no one followed. Birds chirped peacefully overhead, a strange contrast to the danger they were in. The ranger cabin was small and dusty, but it offered shelter and privacy. A single room with a table, 2 chairs, a wood stove, and a narrow cot. Teo locked the door behind them and closed the threadbare curtains. "No one knows about this place except rangers," he said. "We should be safe for now." Lark set the metal box on the table and carefully removed its contents. Besides Elias's journal and the photographs, there were medical reports, a map, and a small tape recorder. "We need to start with the journal," Lark said. "It might explain everything else." She read aloud from Elias Callaway's increasingly frantic entries. January 15, 1983. Found more transfers to Pinewood Research today. Same pattern as the 1940s accounts. Why has it started again after all these years? February 3rd. Penny had another nosebleed today. Her third this week. The school nurse suggested we see Dr. Campbell, but I don't trust him. He's part of the new gifted program they're pushing. February 28th. The twins said something strange today. They told Willa that the men with no faces were watching our house at night. When we asked what they meant, they pointed to the van across the street. But there was no van there. At least, not when we looked. March 20th. I followed the money trail. Pinewood Research is still active, hidden behind new names. They're testing children again. Our children. April 4. Willa found the twins talking to each other without speaking today. When she asked them about it, they said they didn't need words anymore. And then Percy told her what she was thinking. Exactly what she was thinking. We're scared. April 18th. Someone broke into my office at the bank last night. Nothing seems missing, but my desk was searched. They know I'm looking into the old accounts. May 7th. The headaches are getting worse. Both twins now. Otto's starting to have them, too. And Mira found a man taking photos of our house yesterday. May 20th. I confronted Howard today. He admitted he knows about Pinewood Research. His brother worked security there in the 40s, said they were doing tests on children, trying to enhance natural abilities. Howard's own son was in the program back then. Disappeared in 1952. Never found. June 1st. Met with Merrick today. He claims to be from Oversight, says the program has gone too far. Gave me proof of what they're doing. God help us, they're experimenting on children, our children. Creating what they call receptives, minds that can receive thoughts from others. He's going to help us disappear. The final entry, dated June 16, 1983, the day before they vanished. We're leaving tonight. Merrick has arranged everything. New names, new lives far from here. The twins can't stay. What's happening to them is accelerating. They know things they couldn't possibly know, see things they couldn't possibly see, and the people running. These tests will never let them go. If anything happens to us, I've hidden everything at the lake cabin. The truth needs to come out someday. Lark set down the journal, her hands shaking. They were experimenting on children. The twins were showing signs of… what? Telepathy? And the program started again in the 80s, Teo added, after first running in the 40s. Why the gap? Lark spread out the other documents. The medical reports detailed tests on children with receptive capabilities. Brain scans, blood work, cognitive evaluations. Many of the subjects were listed by number rather than name, but some names appeared. Subject 8A, P. Calloway, and Subject 8B, P. Calloway. The twins. They had been part of these experiments. Look at this, Teo said, pointing to a photograph. It showed children sitting in a circle, each wearing a strange headset. Standing behind them were men in lab coats, and off to the side, men in military uniforms. Lark turned the photo over. Written on the back, Project Echo, Phase 2 Testing, 1983. Subjects demonstrating 87% accuracy in thought transmission. They were trying to create psychics, Lark whispered. For military purposes. The map showed Pinewood Creek and the surrounding area. Locations were marked with the now familiar jagged circle symbol. The school, certain houses including the Calloways, and a facility north of the lake labeled Site 7. That's the fenced property I told you about, Teo said. The abandoned research facility. Lark picked up the tape recorder. It was old, the kind that used small cassettes. Surprisingly, it still had power when she pressed play. A child's voice filled the small cabin, a girl speaking slowly and clearly. The building has 3 floors below ground. 22 men are inside. They're looking at papers about the new bombs. The bombs that can think where to go. Another child's voice, nearly identical. The man with white hair is angry. He says they're not ready. The bombs go to the wrong places in the tests. The first voice again. They're talking about the senator now. They don't like what he said on the phone to his friend. They're going to send someone to talk to him. A man's voice interrupted. That's enough for today. Remarkable progress, Penny Percy. How do you feel? My head hurts, said both children, in unison. The recording ended. Lark and Teo stared at each other in shock. The Calloway twins had been describing what appeared to be classified military information. Things they couldn't possibly have known through normal means. They were using children to spy, Teo said finally, turning them into some kind of psychic intelligence agents. And the Calloways found out, Lark added. No wonder they ran. And no wonder people are still trying to keep this secret. She thought, Of her mother, who had been friends with the twins. Had she known about their abilities? Was that why she'd been so determined to find them after they disappeared? Was that why she'd died in a suspicious accident? Before she could voice these questions, the tape recorder clicked and continued playing. A different recording. This is Elias Callaway. If you're hearing this, we're gone. The man helping us is Agent Daniel Merrick. He says he's from Oversight, whatever that means. He claims the program went too far, that using children was never approved. He's helping us disappear tonight. New identities, new lives somewhere in Canada. The twins can't stay here. Not with what's happening to them. And not with what they've seen in the minds of the project leaders. Elias's voice grew quieter, more urgent. If anything happens to us, find Merrick. He knows everything. The last I heard, he was still working for the government, watching over the remaining subjects. He said he'd keep my evidence safe. Trust no one else in this town. Too many people knew about the program, took money to stay quiet, even the sheriff. A woman's voice, presumably Willa, called out something inaudible in the background. I have to go, Elias said. Remember the symbol. Anyone connected to the project uses it as identification. And remember the name, Echo. It never truly ended. The recording stopped. Lark sat back, mind racing. We need to find this Merrick person. If he's still alive, Teo said. This was 40 years ago. A sharp crack from outside made them both freeze. Teo moved to the window and carefully peered through the curtain. Car coming up the service road, he said tensely. Black SUV, like the one that's been following you. Lark quickly gathered the evidence back into the metal box. Is there another way out? Back door leads deeper into the forest. If we can reach the main road, it's only 2 miles to town. They slipped out the back just as the SUV stopped in front of the cabin. Through the trees, Lark glimpsed 2 men in suits, the same men from the speedboat. Teo led her through the dense forest, away from the trails, stepping carefully to avoid making noise. The metal box was heavy and awkward, but Lark refused to leave it behind. After 20 minutes of difficult hiking, they reached a narrow dirt road. Ranger Access Road, Teo explained, leads to the highway. As they hurried along the road, the sound of an engine revving came from behind them. The black SUV had found the road, too. Run! Teo grabbed Lark's free hand and pulled her into a sprint. The next bend, they spotted an old pickup truck parked on the shoulder. A man was loading fishing gear into the back. Help us, Lark called. Please! The man looked up, startled. He was elderly, with a weathered face and sharp blue eyes. As they got closer, Lark recognized him, the security guard from the bank, Howard Martinez. His arm was bandaged, his face lightly singed from the fire, but he was alive. Get in, he said, reaching for the metal box. They're right behind you. They scrambled into the truck just as the SUV rounded the bend. Howard started the engine and stomped on the gas. The ancient pickup roared to life, kicking up dust as it sped down the dirt road. How did you find us? Lark asked, breathless. I've been watching the lake, Howard said. Knew you'd go there eventually. When I saw the speedboat chasing you, I figured you'd found something. He glanced at the metal box. Elias's evidence? You knew about it? Teo asked. Howard nodded grimly. I knew Elias was gathering proof. Didn't know where he hid it. He checked the rearview mirror. They're still following. We need to get somewhere safe. Where? Lark asked. There's only one person in this town. They're afraid of, Howard said. And luckily, she still scares the hell out of me too. Who? Lark asked, as Howard's pickup rattled down the dirt road, the black SUV still in pursuit. "Principal Eleanor Vaughn," Howard said. "She ran Pinewood Elementary from 1965 to 2005. Meanest woman I ever met, but also the only one who ever stood up to those government types." "Principal Vaughn?" Teo looked surprised. She was terrifying. But why would they be afraid of her? "Because she has proof they can't afford to let get out," Howard said, making a sharp turn onto a side road. "And because she's got friends in even higher places than they do." The SUV fell back as Howard navigated the narrow, winding road that cut through dense forest. After several twists and turns, they emerged near an old farmhouse set back from the road, surrounded by a well-tended garden. Howard parked behind the house, hidden from the road. "Stay here while I make sure she's alone." As Howard knocked on the back door, Lark turned to Teo. "I remember Principal Vaughn. Steel gray hair, always wore suits. She retired right before I left for college." "She caught me skipping class once," Teo said. "Made me read the entire town charter as punishment. I can still recite parts of it." The back door opened. Howard spoke briefly with someone inside, then waved them forward. Eleanor Vaughn looked exactly as Lark remembered. Tall and straight-backed despite being well into her 80s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her silver hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she wore a crisp blue blouse with slacks. "Ms. Davies, Mr. Vasquez," she said, nodding briskly. "Howard tells me you've been making quite a stir in my town. Come in before those idiots in the SUV figure out where you've gone." The inside of the farmhouse was neat and old-fashioned, with bookshelves lining every wall. Ms. Vaughn led them to the kitchen, where a pot of tea sat on the table. "I've been expecting someone to start asking questions again," she said, pouring tea into cups without asking if they wanted any. "Your mother tried, Lark. Very persistent woman, Christine was." Lark nearly dropped her cup. "You knew my mother was investigating the Callaways." "Of course I did. She was one of my teachers before you were born. When the twins disappeared, she was determined to find them." Ms. Vaughn's expression softened slightly. "She came close, too. Too close." "Did they kill her?" Lark asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ms. Vaughn met her gaze. "That car accident was no accident. But I could never prove it." Lark felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. All these years, she'd believed her mother's death was random tragedy. Now, it seemed she'd been murdered for getting too close to the truth. "I'd like to see what you found," Ms. Vaughn said, nodding at the metal box. They spread the contents on the kitchen table. Ms. Vaughn examined each item carefully, her face betraying no emotion until she reached the tape recording. She held it for a long moment without playing it. "I remember the day this was recorded," she said finally. "I was there." "You were part of Project Echo?" Teo asked, shocked. "Not the way you think." Ms. Vaughn set the recorder down. "I was a teacher before I became principal. In 1947, the government approached our school about identifying gifted children for a special program. It all seemed legitimate at first. Extra education for bright minds." She removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. "By the time I realized what they were really doing, several children had already been changed." "Changed how?" Lark asked. "The tests were designed to enhance natural abilities some children have. Sensitivity, intuition, what some might call low-level ESP. They used various methods: drugs disguised as vitamins, sound experiments, even early versions of electrical stimulation." Ms. Vaughn walked to a bookshelf and removed a false panel, revealing a hidden safe. she entered a combination and withdrew a thick file. In 1952, a boy named James Martinez, Howard's brother, demonstrated remarkable abilities similar to what the Callaway twins would show 30 years later. The next day, he disappeared. The official story was that his family had moved suddenly. Howard nodded solemnly. "They took my brother. Parents never recovered from it. After that, I started keeping records," Ms. Vaughn continued. "Every child in the program, every test, every result. I couldn't stop it. They had too much power, too much money flowing through the town. But I could document it." She opened the EZED file to reveal newspaper clippings, school records, and photographs dating back to the 1940s. The program went dormant in 1963 after several failures. But in 1980, new funding appeared, new scientists, and a renewed interest in finding children with potential. She looked at Lark. The Callaway twins were exceptional. From the beginning, they showed natural telepathic abilities. Twin speak, they called it. The program wanted to enhance that, create perfect receivers. "Receivers?" Teo asked. "Minds that could receive thoughts and information from others, even at a distance." They weren't interested in sending, just receiving. Human listening devices, essentially. Impossible to detect, impossible to block. Lark thought about the recording they'd heard. The twins describing a secret military facility they couldn't possibly have seen. They succeeded. Too well. Miss Bees, Vaughn agreed. The twins began receiving information from everyone around them. Teachers, neighbors, even the scientists themselves. Top secret information no child should know. When Elias discovered what was happening to his children, he did what any good father would do. He planned to run. "And Agent Merrick helped them," Lark said, remembering the journal entry. Ms. Wolfers. Yastin smiled thinly. "Daniel Merrick. He was oversight, sent to make sure the program stayed within certain boundaries. When he realized they were experimenting on children without proper authorization, he went rogue, helped the Callaways disappear." "Do you know where they went?" Lark asked eagerly. "No. Merrick arranged everything. False identities, new lives somewhere far away. It was safer for everyone if I didn't know." Howard, who had been watching out the window, suddenly tensed. Two cars just pulled up out front, black SUV and a sedan. Ms. Vaughn didn't look concerned. "Right on schedule." She calmly opened a drawer and took out an old revolver. "Howard, take them to the cellar. There's a tunnel that leads to the old church. I'll handle our visitors." "You can't stay here alone," Lark protested. "I've been dealing with these people for 50 years, child." Ms. Vaughn checked the revolver with practiced ease. "Besides, I'm not alone. Sheriff Mills should be arriving any minute. The real sheriff, not that puppet they had back in '83. As if on cue, a police cruiser pulled in behind the SUV. Howard led Lark and Teo to a concealed door behind the pantry. It opened onto a narrow staircase leading to a cellar stocked with preserves and old furniture. Against the far wall was another door. "Root cellar tunnel," Howard explained. "Built during Prohibition. Leads all the way to the basement of St. Mark's Church." "Wait," Lark said. "The school records for the twins. We need to see if there were other children in the program." "Already ahead of you," Ms. Vaughn said, appearing at the top of the stairs, with a manila folder. "These are copies of the class rosters from 1983. All the special program children are marked with that symbol you've been seeing." She handed the folder to Lark. "Now go. I'll contact you when it's safe." As they entered the tunnel, the sound of knocking came from above, followed by Ms. Vaughn's firm voice greeting the visitors. The tunnel was narrow and damp, reinforced with old timber. Howard led the way with a flashlight, pointing out uneven spots in the floor. The air was thick with the smell of earth and time. "How far to the church?" Teo whispered. "Quarter mile, maybe," Howard replied. "Used to be shorter, but part of it collapsed in the 90s. They had to dig a new section." Lark opened the folder as they walked. Inside were class photos and rosters from Pinewood Elementary. In the 1983 fourth grade class photo, she spotted Otto Calloway, a small boy with a serious expression. On the attendance sheet beside his name was the jagged circle symbol. 5 other children had the same mark, including Penny and Percy Calloway in the second grade roster. And there, in the same class as the twins, was another familiar name, Christine Davies, Lark's mother. Her mother had been in the program too. "Howard," Lark said, her voice shaking. "Was my mother part of the experiments?" Howard didn't turn around. "Yes, she was in the first new group in 1980. Showed promise, they said. But not like the twins. Nobody was like them." "Is that why she was so determined to find them? Because she was part of it too?" "Partly. But also because they told her things before they left. Things only Christine believed." "What things?" Before Howard could answer, a rumble shook the tunnel. Dust and small pieces of dirt rained down from the ceiling. "What was that?" Teo asked. "Something collapsed," Howard said, shining his light ahead. "We need to hurry." They increased their pace, Lark clutching the folder and metal box. Her mind raced with questions. What had the twins told her mother? What abilities had she developed? In the program? And how had it all led to her death? The tunnel began to slope upward. Ahead, Lark could see what looked like wooden stairs. "Almost there," Howard said. "St. Mark's basement. From there, we can—" Another rumble, louder this time. The tunnel shook violently. Howard stumbled, dropping the flashlight. The beam spun crazily, illuminating a section of ceiling as it began to crack. "Run!" Teo shouted, grabbing Lark's arm. They bolted for the stairs as the tunnel collapsed behind them. Dirt and timber crashed down, a wave of dust billowing forward. They reached the stairs just as the cave-in stopped, leaving the tunnel blocked 20 feet behind them. Howard coughed, covered in dirt but unhurt. "That wasn't natural," he said. "Someone brought it down on purpose." They climbed the stairs to find themselves in the basement of St. Mark's Church. Boxes of old hymnals and Christmas decorations lined the walls. A door led upstairs to the main church. "Someone knew about the tunnel," Teo said. "They're trying to trap us. Or they want us to go where they can catch us," Lark added. "We can't stay here." Howard nodded grimly. "I know someone who can help us, but we need to move carefully. They'll be watching everything now." As they crept up the stairs, Lark opened the folder again. On the last page was a note in Ms. Vaughn's neat handwriting. "Find Daniel Merrick. Last known location, Department of Defense Oversight Division, Washington, D.C. Retired 2010. Current whereabouts unknown. If anyone knows where the Calloways are." Now, it's him. Below the note was an address, not in Pinewood Creek, but in a city about 50 miles away. Lark showed it to Howard. "Do you think he's still there?" "Only one way to find out," Howard replied. "But first, we need to get out of town without being seen, and that won't be easy." The main church was empty, afternoon sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. Outside, through the front doors, Lark could see the street was clear. But that didn't mean they weren't being watched. "The twins," she said suddenly. The file said there were other children in the program. "What happened to them?" Howard's face darkened. "Some disappeared. Some had accidents. A few just never showed any special abilities and were left alone. And my mother? What happened to her?" "In the program?" Howard hesitated. Christine wasn't like the others. Instead of receiving thoughts, she saw things. Future things. Not always, not clearly, but enough to scare them. He looked away. After the Calloways disappeared, she told me the twins had shared something with her. A vision of what was coming. Something the program leaders had seen in their minds. "What was it?" Lark asked. "I don't know. She never told me. Said it was too dangerous for anyone else to know." Howard checked. The street again. But whatever it was, they killed her to keep it secret. Teo, who had been examining the church's side doors, returned with keys. "Found these in the office. They're for the church van." Howard nodded approvingly. "Good. We'll take back roads. To Merrick's last address. Maybe he left something behind that can lead us to the Calloways." As they prepared to leave, Lark looked at the metal box and folder in her hands. After 40 years, she was finally uncovering the truth about what had happened in this town. And to her mother. But the most important question remained unanswered. What had the Calloway twins seen that was worth killing for? And after all these years, were they still alive to tell the tale? The church van smelled like coffee and old hymnals. Howard drove cautiously, taking back roads and farm lanes to avoid main highways. In the passenger seat, Teo kept watch for any vehicles that might be following them. Lark sat in the back, spreading out the school records on the seat beside her. In 1983, there were 8 children in the special program, she said, counting the jagged circle symbols on the class rosters. The 3 Calloways, my mother, and 4 others. "What happened to the other 4? Teo asked. Howard glanced in the rearview mirror. 2 moved away suddenly, like the Calloways. One had an accident on the playground, broke his neck falling from the jungle gym. The last one just stopped showing any special abilities. They lost interest in him." Lark shivered. Children dying in manufactured accidents. Families disappearing. All to protect a government program that used children as psychic spies. "I still don't understand what the twins saw that was so important," she said. "What could 2 8-year-old children possibly know that would be worth killing for 40 years later?" "That's what we need to ask Merrick," Howard replied, turning onto a narrow country road that cut through cornfields. "If he's still alive." The address Ms. Vaughn had given them led to a small town called Riverton, about an hour's drive from Pinewood Creek. As they approached the outskirts, Lark's phone buzzed with a text from Ruby. "V's house searched, but she's fine. Sheriff kept them busy. Be careful. They're checking all roads out of town." "We need to ditch the van," Howard said after Lark read the message aloud. "It's too easy to spot." They stopped at a busy shopping center. Teo went inside and returned, 15 minutes later with the keys to a rental car he'd picked up from a nearby agency. "Paid cash, used my real ID," he explained. "Better than stealing something, and they won't be looking for a rental yet." They transferred their evidence to the trunk of the compact blue sedan. Howard insisted on driving the van to a different town to create a false trail. They agreed to meet at Merrick's address in 2 hours. As Teo drove them toward Riverton, Lark continued examining the documents. Among the school records was a brochure she hadn't noticed before, labeled Brightfield Research Initiative, Cognitive Development Studies. Inside were smiling photos of children playing with puzzles and simple mechanical devices. The text described a unique opportunity for gifted students to develop their natural talents through specialized education techniques. At the bottom was contact information for Dr. Vernon Wolcott, Program Coordinator, and an address for Brightfield Research Campus, North Shore Drive. "Teo," Lark said suddenly, "remember that abandoned government facility you mentioned? The IOR One by the lake with the fence around it? Yeah, north shore of Pinewood Lake. I think it was called Brightfield. She showed him the brochure. This was their cover, a special program for gifted kids. But really, they were experimenting on children with psychic potential. Teo glanced at the brochure. Makes sense. My dad always called it the lab. Said nobody local was ever hired to work there except as security or maintenance. All the scientists came from outside. They reached Riverton by mid-afternoon. It was larger than Pinewood Creek, with several stoplights and chain stores along its main street. Merrick's address turned out to be a small bungalow on a quiet street lined with maple. Trees! Doesn't look like anyone's home, Teo said as they parked across the street. No lights were visible inside, and the yard showed signs of neglect. Grass slightly too long, newspapers piled on the porch. Let's wait for Howard, Lark suggested. He should be here soon. While they waited, Lark searched online for information about Brightfield research. Most results were unrelated, but buried in a government archives site, she found a brief mention. Brightfield Research Initiative, 1947-1979. Rural Education Enhancement Program funded through Department of Defense. Grants terminated due to budget constraints. They made it look like it ended in 1979, she told Teo. But according to Elias's journal, it started up again in the early 80s. Under a different name, probably, Teo replied. That's how these things work. Change the name. Keep the same program. An hour later, Howard arrived in a taxi. Left the van in Bedford, he reported. Should keep them busy for a while. Together, they approached Merrick's house. The mailbox was stuffed with flyers and advertisements. No one answered when they knocked. Doesn't look like anyone's been here for weeks, Howard observed. Teo peered through a window. Place looks lived in, though. Furniture, pictures on the walls. Not abandoned. Howard tried the door. Locked. Around back, he suggested. The backyard was small and fenced, with a vegetable garden gone wild with weeds. The back door was locked too, but a kitchen window was cracked open. I can fit through there, Lark said. Before the others could object, she pushed the window wider and hoisted herself up and through. She landed with a soft thud on the kitchen's counter, then unlatched the back door for Howard and Teo. Inside, the house was tidy but dusty, as if its owner had left expecting to return soon. Mail was sorted on a desk in the living room, dishes washed and put away in the kitchen. A half-empty coffee mug sat beside an armchair, a thin layer of mold growing on its surface. Looks like he left in a hurry, Howard said. Question is, did he leave on his own, or did someone take him? They split up to search the house. Lark took the study, a small room lined with bookshelves and filing cabinets. On the desk was a framed photo of a younger man, presumably Merrick, in a government office, shaking hands with someone whose face had been cropped out of the picture. The filing cabinets were locked, but Lark found a key taped under the desk. Inside were decades of carefully organized documents, military records, news clippings, and files labeled Project Echo. But the recent files, from the last 5 years, were missing. Guys, Teo called from the bedroom, you should see this. Thebaiku found him standing before a closet whose back wall had been removed, revealing a hidden room. Inside was a makeshift office, computer, printer, maps pinned to walls, and stacks of files. Red strings connected photos and documents on a large corkboard. He was still investigating, Lark breathed, taking in the room. The photos showed various buildings, including the Brightfield facility, along with pictures of people. She recognized Principal Vaughn in one, looking much younger. In the center of the corkboard was a recent photograph of an elderly couple on a porch. The man had white hair and kind eyes that Lark immediately recognized, despite the 40 years that had passed. "Elias Callaway," she whispered. "He's alive," Howard examined the photo. Dated 3 months ago. Where was this taken? Teo pointed to a small notation on the back. SL check-in 9943. All secure. SL, Lark repeated. Could be a place. St. Louis? Salt Lake City? Or a code name, Howard suggested. A manila folder on the desk was labeled Current Locations, Classified. Inside was a list of names, most redacted, with addresses and dates of the last confirmed sighting. Near the bottom, partially visible beneath a black marker line, was Callaway, Vernon, BC, British Columbia, Teo said. Canada, just like Elias said in the recording. They went to Canada. Lark's heart raced. After 40 years, the Callaways might still be alive, living under different names in a small Canadian town. But before she could process this discovery, Howard froze, staring at the computer screen. "Look at this," he said. The screen showed an email inbox. The most recent message, marked urgent and dated just 2 weeks ago, had the subject line, Echo, Revival Approved, Phase 3 Beginning. Lark clicked on it. The message was brief. Project reactivation confirmed. New subjects identified. First tests scheduled at Waverly Facility next month. Transceivers, not just receivers this time. Full authorization from the top. They're really going to do it. They're starting it again, Howard said quietly. After all these years, that's why they're so desperate to clean up the loose ends from the 80s. They don't want anyone connecting the old project to the new one. What's a transceiver? Teo asked. If receivers could pick up thoughts, Lark said slowly, transceivers could send them too. They're trying to create people who can put thoughts into other people's minds. The implications were chilling. Psychic spies were one thing, but people who could implant thoughts in others? That was mind control. Another email caught Lark's attention. The subject was simply, Twins, sent 1 week ago. The message read, Located, P&P, still connected despite separation. Abilities dormant but present. Recommend immediate extraction before new project goes public. They know too much. The Callaway twins, Lark whispered. They found them. And they're going after them again, Howard added. Because of whatever they saw in 1983, whatever they told your mother. Teo, who had been examining the maps on the wall, suddenly pointed to one showing Northern California. Several locations were circled, with dates beside them. Look at these. Dates, he said. They're all from the last month. And there's a note. M moved to safe house after attempted extraction. M for Merrick, Lark said. He's hiding. Someone tried to grab him. A sound from outside made them all freeze. Car doors closing. Howard moved to the window and carefully peeked out. Black SUV, he said grimly. 2 men in suits, same ones from the lake. Teo quickly gathered the most important documents, including the photo of Elias and the Canadian address. There must be a back way out. They found it in the basement, a storm door leading to the backyard. As they slipped out, they heard the front door crash open above them. They ran through neighboring yards, cutting between houses until they reached their rental car 2 blocks away. Teo drove while Lark and Howard examined what they'd managed to take. We need to find Merrick, Lark said. He's the only one who can lead us to the Callaways. Howard studied the California map. These markings suggest he was moving between these locations within the last few weeks. If he's still alive, he's probably at the last spot marked here, near a town called Reading. That's across the country, Teo pointed out, and we've got people chasing us. Then we'd better move fast, Lark replied, because if they found the twins, they'll do whatever it takes to silence them, and us too. Howard's expression was grim. There's something else we need to consider. The twins were 8 years old in 1983. They'd be in their 40s now. If their abilities continued to develop all this time, they might know we're looking for them, Lark finished. They might even be trying to reach out to us. As if in answer, Lark's phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. The water held one truth. The man holds another. But the greatest danger lies in what we saw. Find us before they do. Lark stared at the message, a chill running down her spine. After 40 years of silence, the Calloway twins were reaching out. And they were in danger. We need to get off the road, Howard said, glancing nervously at the text message on Lark's phone. They can track that. Lark turned off her phone and removed the battery. Where do we go now? California to find Merrick? Or Canada to find the Calloways? Neither, Howard replied. We can't just drive across the country with these people after us. We need help. They stopped at a small motel outside Riverton, paying cash for a single room. While Teo kept watch by the window, Lark and Howard spread the documents on the bed. P has to be Penny or Percy Calloway, Lark said, reading the text message again. The water held one truth. That's the box we found in the lake. The man holds another, probably meaning Merrick. But what about the greatest danger lies in what we saw? Whatever the twins saw in the minds of the project leaders, Howard suggested, something so dangerous they've been hiding for 40 years. A knock at the door made them all freeze. Howard motioned for silence while Teo peeked through the curtains. There's a man outside, Teo whispered. Older, gray hair, wearing a dark suit. He's alone. How did they find us so quickly? Lark asked, gathering the documents. Howard crept to the door. Who's there? He called. Someone who wants to help, came the reply. The voice was calm, measured. I'm unarmed. I know about Project Echo, and I know what the twins saw. Howard looked through the peephole, then back at Lark and Teo. It's one of them, from the black car, the older one. Don't open it, Teo warned. It could be a trap. The man outside spoke again. My name is Agent Merrick, Daniel Merrick. I've been looking for you, Ms. Davies, just as you've been looking for me. Lark moved to the door. Prove it, she called. Your mother was Christine Davies. She was in the program from 1980 to 1982. She could see things before they happened, and she was friends with Penny and Percy Calloway. They told her what they saw, what they pulled from the mind of Dr. Wolcott during a test session in May 1983. Lark looked at Howard, who nodded slowly. This was information only someone involved would know. How did you find us? Lark asked through the door. The same way I've stayed one step ahead of them for years, Merrick replied. I have friends. One of them spotted you at my house and called me. Now please, let me in before they realize where I am. I can help you find the twins. Howard unlatched the door, but kept his body in the way. Where's your proof? That you're really Merrick? The man reached slowly into his pocket and removed a worn leather wallet. Inside was an old ID card with a much younger version of his face, labeled Department of Defense, Oversight Division. I helped the Calloways escape in 1983, he said. I've been protecting them and other program subjects ever since, including your mother, until... He trailed off, looking at Lark. Until they killed her, Lark finished. Howard stepped back, allowing Merrick to enter. He was tall and lean, with silver hair and alert eyes that missed nothing as he scanned the Apuiki room. Despite his age, at least in his 70s, he moved with the precise confidence of someone used to dangerous situations. "We don't have much time," Merrick said, sitting on the edge of the desk. "They know you have evidence about Project Echo. They know you're trying to find the Callaways, and they've already located the twins." "How?" Teo asked. "If they've been hiding all this time." "Because the project is starting again," Merrick explained. Phase 3. They're scanning for people with natural abilities, using new technology that can detect certain brainwave patterns from a distance. That's how they found Penny and Percy, even though they've been living apart for decades. "Living apart?" Lark asked. "Why would they separate?" "To protect each other," Merrick said. "When the twins were together, their abilities were stronger, more noticeable. By living on opposite sides of the country, they could stay hidden. Percy in Canada, Penny in Florida." "But they're still connected," Howard said, remembering the email they'd found. Merrick nodded. "Always. Distance doesn't matter for true receivers. They can still share thoughts, feelings, even dreams. That's what made them so valuable to the program, and so dangerous." Lark felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The twins were alive, and she might actually find them. "What did they see?" she asked. "What was so important that people are still dying to keep it secret?" Merrick's expression darkened. In May 1983, during a routine test session, the twins were connected to Dr. Wolcott, the project leader, to see if they could read his surface thoughts. But they went deeper, much deeper. They saw something in his mind that even he had tried to forget. "Which was?" Howard pressed. "Project Echo wasn't just about creating psychic spies," Merrick said. "That was just the beginning. The ultimate goal was to develop individuals who could not just receive thoughts, but transmit them, plant ideas in other people's minds, control them." "Mind control," Teo said skeptically. "That was the theory," Merrick continued. "But Wolcott and his team discovered something unexpected. When the receivers, like the twins, connected deeply with a subject, they didn't just read current thoughts. They sometimes saw future ones." Lark thought of what Howard had said about her mother, that she could see future things. Precognition? Not exactly. More like probability. The mind constantly runs simulations of likely futures based on current information. The receivers could tap into those simulations, see the futures someone was planning or expecting. "And what future did they see in Wolcott's mind?" Lark asked. Merrick hesitated. "The true purpose of Phase 3. Echo was never meant to stop at surveillance or even control of individuals. The ultimate goal was mass influence. They planned to use the most powerful receivers, children like the twins, to reach into thousands, potentially millions of minds simultaneously." "That's not possible," Howard objected. "In 1983, no," Merrick agreed. "But Wolcott was planning decades ahead, and the twins saw it all. The research path, the technological enhancements, everything needed to amplify their abilities to an unimaginable degree." "To do what?" Lark asked. "To shape public opinion, to end discord, to create unity of thought." Merrick's voice was grim. In Wolcott's vision, receivers like the twins would become the ultimate tools of social control. Weapons that could make entire populations accept whatever their controllers wanted them to believe. A heavy silence filled the room. The implications were staggering. Mind control on a massive scale, using children with psychic abilities as the conduits. "The twins saw all this?" Teo asked finally. "They did, and they shared it with your mother," Merrick said, looking at Lark. She was the only one who believed them, who understood what it meant. "Is that why they killed her?" Lark asked, her voice barely a whisper. Yes. She was gathering evidence, planning to go public. They couldn't allow that. Lark felt a surge of pride for her mother, along with a renewed sense of loss. Christine Davies had died trying to expose a terrible truth. Now it was up to Lark to finish what she started. "Where are the twins now?" she asked. "Last I heard, Percy was still in Vernon, British Columbia. Penny was in Sarasota, Florida. But they're in danger. The new project leaders have sent extraction teams for both of them." "Why now? After all these years?" "Because Phase 3 is starting, and the twins are the best subjects they ever had. With the new technology, they could be the keys to achieving what Wolcott envisioned. And because the twins know too much, they've had 40 years to piece together the full scope of the project." Howard had been examining the documents they'd taken from Merrick's house. "According to these notes, you've been hiding in California." "A necessary misdirection," Merrick smiled thinly. "I left those breadcrumbs for them to follow. I've actually been much closer, watching Pinewood Creek. Watching you, Ms. Davies." "Me? Why?" "Because I knew someday you'd start asking questions about your mother, about the Callaways. I've been waiting for you to find the evidence Elias hid." Teo, who had remained silent, studying Merrick with suspicion, finally spoke. "How do we know we can trust you? You were part of this program." "I was oversight," Merrick corrected. "My job was to ensure the project stayed within ethical boundaries. When I realized there were no boundaries, that they were experimenting on children without consent or oversight, I helped the Callaways escape." "And you've been running ever since," Howard said. "Watching, waiting, gathering evidence." Merrick stood and moved to the window, carefully checking outside. "And now I need your help. The evidence you found in the lake, combined with what I've gathered over the years, could be enough to finally expose Project Echo, to stop Phase 3 before it begins." "How?" Lark asked. "I have contacts in the legitimate oversight community, people who don't know about Echo but would shut it down if they saw the evidence. But I can't approach them directly. I'm too closely watched." He turned to face them. "You three aren't. Not yet." "So you want us to be your messengers," Teo said, still skeptical. "I want you to help me save the twins," Merrick replied, "and stop a program that could change the nature of human freedom forever." Lark's phone, reassembled and powered back on, chimed with another text. "Trust M, but watch closely. Not everything is as it seems. Coming for us tonight. Time running out." P. Merrick read the message over her shoulder. "They know they're in danger," he said. "We need to move quickly. I have a plane waiting at a private airfield 30 miles from here. It can take us to Canada, to Percy." "What about Penny in Florida?" Howard asked. "One twin leads to the other," Merrick said. "Find Percy, and he'll help us reach Penny." Lark hesitated, weighing their options. Merrick was offering answers, transportation, a way to find the twins. But Penny's warning, "Not everything is as it seems," echoed in her mind. "If we do this," she said finally, "we bring all the evidence with us. We don't split up. And at the first sign that something's wrong, we're out." Merrick nodded. "Agreed. Pack only what you need. We leave in 30 minutes. As they quickly gathered their things, Lark pulled Howard aside. "Do you trust him?" she whispered. Howard glanced at Merrick, who was discussing flight plans with Teo. "Not completely, but he knows things only someone involved would know." Right, the text said, "Trust M, but watch closely," Lark reminded him. "Then that's what we'll do," Howard replied. Watch closely." 30 minutes later, they were in Merrick's car, not the black SUV they'd seen before, but an ordinary sedan, heading for the airfield. Darkness had fallen, and rain pattered against the windshield. "When we find Percy," Lark asked, "what then? How do we stop the project?" "With the truth," Merrick replied, his eyes on the road. "The complete truth about what they did and what they're planning to do. The kind of truth that even the most classified program can't survive." As they drove through the rainy night, Lark thought about her mother, about the Calloway twins, about 4 decades of secrets and lies. She was close now, close to the truth, close to fulfilling her mother's last mission. But as Penny had warned, not everything was as it seemed, and the greatest danger still lay ahead. The private airfield was little more than a strip of asphalt and a small hangar at the edge of a farmer's field. A single-engine plane waited on the tarmac, its white paint gleaming under the security lights. "My pilot should be ready," Merrick said as they pulled up beside the hangar. "We'll be in Vernon by morning." Lark clutched her bag containing the metal box and documents. She hadn't let them out of her sight since finding them in the lake. Now, heading to another country with a man they barely knew, she felt both hopeful and uneasy. Rain fell steadily as they hurried from the car to the hangar. Inside, a tall man in a pilot's uniform checked instruments on a small desk. "Everything's set, sir," he told Merrick. "Weather's not great, but we have clearance." "Thank you, Jenkins," Merrick replied. "These are my associates. They'll be joining us." The pilot nodded politely, but seemed uncomfortable with the additional passengers. Lark noticed him glance at their bags with suspicion. "I need to use the restroom before we board," she said, spotting a door marked washroom at the back of the hangar. Inside the tiny bathroom, Lark locked the door and quickly pulled out her phone. She had no service here, but that wasn't what she wanted. She opened the music box, which she'd kept with her, and studied it carefully. There had to be more to it than the coordinates. Willa Calloway had been a piano teacher. Music was her life. Why would she create a music box that made clicks instead of music? Turning the box over in her hands, Lark noticed something she'd missed before. Tiny holes drilled in the bottom in a precise pattern. She held the box up to the light and saw that the holes formed another pattern: musical notes on a staff. Using an app on her phone, she identified the notes: ECHODANGER, Echo Danger. But there was more. Below the notes was another sequence. BBFED. Lark didn't recognize this as a word, but she remembered something from her childhood. Her mother teaching her to remember phone numbers by associating the digits with musical notes. In this system, the notes BBFED would translate to 222-354, a partial phone number? Or something else? A knock at the bathroom door startled her. "Lark, you okay in there?" It was Teo. "Fine," she called, quickly putting the music box away. "Just a minute?" She flushed the toilet for cover and washed her hands, mind racing. The music box contained more messages than she'd realized. But what did 22354 mean? When she emerged, everyone was ready to board the plane. Merrick led them across the wet tarmac, rain soaking their clothes despite the quick dash. The aircraft was small, just 6 passenger seats behind the cockpit. Merrick took a seat near the front, gesturing for the others to choose their places. Lark sat across from him, with Howard behind her and Teo across from Howard. "It's about a 4-hour flight," Merrick explained as Jenkins went through pre-flight checks. "We'll land at a small private airstrip outside Vernon. I have a car waiting." "There. And then what?" Lark asked. "How do we find Percy?" "I have his address," Merrick replied. "He lives under the name Peter Wilson, works as a librarian." The engines roared to life. drowning further conversation. As they taxied down the runway, Lark noticed something odd. A second plane at the far end of the airfield, barely visible through the rain. It looked like another small aircraft, its lights off. The takeoff was bumpy, the small plane fighting against wind and rain as it climbed into the night sky. Once they leveled off, Jenkins turned on the autopilot and spoke briefly to Merrick before returning his attention to the controls. "Try to get some rest," Merrick suggested. "It's been a long day, and tomorrow will be longer." Lark pretended to close her eyes, but she watched Merrick through her lashes. He seemed tense, checking his watch repeatedly and glancing out the window, as if looking for something. After about 20 minutes, he unbuckled his seatbelt and moved to speak privately with the pilot. Their conversation was too quiet to hear over the engine noise, but Lark noticed Jenkins shake his head firmly about something. When Merrick returned to his seat, his expression was troubled. He caught Lark watching him and forced a smile. "Just checking our route," he explained. "The weather's getting worse." Howard, who had been dozing, suddenly sat up straight. "We're heading east," he said. "What?" Teo asked. "We should be flying northwest to reach Canada," Howard said, pointing to the compass display visible from his seat. "We're heading northeast." Merrick's face hardened. "You're mistaken. Jenkins knows where we're going." But Howard wasn't backing down. "I was a navigation specialist in the Navy. I know directions. We are not flying toward Canada." A tense silence fell over the cabin. Lark felt the weight of the music box in her pocket and remembered the warning, "Trust M, but watch closely." "Where are you really taking us, Mr. Merrick?" she asked quietly. For a moment, Merrick seemed to consider continuing the lie. Then his shoulders sagged slightly. "To safety," he said. "The situation is more complicated than I explained." "You're not taking us to Percy," Lark stated. "It's too dangerous," Merrick insisted. "There's an extraction team already in Vernon. They'd be waiting for us." "So where are we going?" Teo demanded. "A secure facility in upstate New York. My colleagues there can protect you while we figure out our next move." "Your colleagues?" Howard's voice was sharp. "What colleagues?" Before Merrick could answer, the plane shuddered violently. Outside the window, lightning flashed across the dark sky. "Just turbulence," Merrick assured them, but his eyes betrayed concern. The plane dipped suddenly, then stabilized. Jenkins called back from the cockpit, his voice tight. "Sir, we have company. Aircraft approaching from the southwest, matching our speed." Merrick's expression changed from concern to alarm. "Military?" "Doesn't appear to be. Small aircraft, like ours. No identification transponder." Lark remembered the second plane she'd spotted at the airfield. "They followed us," she said. "How? Did they know we were leaving?" Merrick didn't answer. Instead, he moved to the cockpit and spoke urgently to Jenkins. The pilot nodded and began adjusting controls. When Merrick returned, his face was grim. "Change of plans. We're diverting to a smaller airfield in Pennsylvania. We need to lose our tail." "Who's following us?" Howard asked. "Could be anyone," Merrick replied evasively. "Project Echo has resources in many agencies. They could have tracked us from Riverton." Teo leaned forward. "Or maybe they knew exactly where we were going because one of us told them." The accusation hung in the air. Merrick met Teo's gaze steadily. "I've spent 40 years protecting the Calloway family and other program subjects. I helped Elias and Willa escape with their children. Why would I betray them now?" "Maybe you're not who you say you are," Lark suggested. "The real Merrick could be dead or compromised. You think I'm an imposter?" Merrick actually smiled. "Your caution is understandable, but misplaced. Ask me anything about the Callaways, about Project Echo. Things only the real Daniel Merrick would know. Before Lark could respond, her phone chimed with a text message. Despite being thousands of feet in the air, with no cell service possible, the message appeared on her screen. Not Merrick. Real M in custody since yesterday. This man works for them. Plane following is real help. Let them catch up. P. Lark stared at the message in shock. How was this possible? How could the twins reach her phone in flight? Merrick noticed her expression and lunged for the phone. Lark jerked away, but he was quick. His fingers closed around her wrist, twisting, painfully until she dropped the device. "Who sent that?" he demanded, snatching up the phone. When he read the message, his face darkened with rage. "Impossible!" The mask of friendly cooperation fell away completely. Merrick reached into his jacket and pulled out a small handgun, pointing it at them. "Nobody move," he ordered. "Jenkins, increase speed. Lose that tail at all costs." "How long have you been working for them?" Howard asked, his voice calm despite the gun pointed at his chest. "I never stopped," Not Merrick replied coldly. "Daniel Merrick was a convenient cover. I've been with Project Echo from the beginning. One of Dr. Wolcott's first recruits. The perfect mole in oversight." "So everything you told us was a lie," Lark said. "Not everything. Just the important parts." He smiled thinly. The twins did see the true purpose of Phase 3. But it wasn't mind control for the masses. It was something far more valuable. "What?" Teo asked. "Prediction. Perfect, accurate prediction of human behavior. The financial markets, elections, geopolitical events. Think of the power in knowing what will happen before it happens. Using children as your tools," Lark said with disgust. "Using gifted individuals to create a more stable, predictable world." He gestured with the gun. "The twins are the key. Their abilities, properly amplified and directed, could revolutionize everything." The plane shook again, more violently this time. Jenkins called back, his voice strained. "They're getting closer. I can't shake them in this weather." Not Merrick's jaw tightened. "Keep trying," Lark thought quickly. The music box was still in her pocket. The strange number sequence, 22354. What could it mean? Then it hit her. Not a phone number. A frequency. Her mother had worked briefly at a local radio station. She had taught Lark about radio frequencies, how each station had its own number on the dial. "The greatest danger lies in what we saw," the twins had said in their text. What if they hadn't? Just seen the plans for Project Echo? What if they had seen something even more terrible? Something that would happen because of the project? The plane lurched again. Through the window, Lark spotted the other aircraft, now flying alongside them just a few hundred yards away. Light blinked from its window. 3 short flashes, 3 long, 3 short. SOS in Morse code. Not Merrick was distracted, arguing with Jenkins about their course. Lark slowly reached for her bag, pulling out the metal recorder they'd found in the underwater box. She set it to record and slid it under her seat. "What are you really planning to do with us?" she asked, trying to keep Not Merrick talking. "Take us to Brightfield?" He smiled coldly. "Brightfield is obsolete. The new facility is much more advanced. And you'll be given the opportunity to contribute to the project, just as your mother was." "You mean be test subjects," Howard said. "Participants in humanity's future," Not Merrick corrected. "Though I'm afraid your participation will be brief. Once we've extracted what you know, there won't be any need to keep you alive. Another violent shake, followed by a deafening bang. The plane dropped suddenly, then rolled to the right. Engine. Failure! Jenkins shouted from the cockpit. Starboard engine is out. Not Merrick staggered, struggling to keep his balance as the plane tilted. The gun wavered in his hand. Teo seized the moment, launching himself across the narrow aisle. He slammed into Not Merrick, grappling for the weapon. Howard joined the struggle, trying to pin Not Merrick's arm. The gun went off, a deafening crack. In the small cabin, the bullet tore through the ceiling, letting in a rush of cold air. Lark grabbed her bag and the metal box. The plane was descending rapidly now, the remaining engine screaming as Jenkins fought for control. "We're going down!" the pilot shouted. "Brace for impact!" Not Merrick broke free from Teo and Howard, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. He still had the gun. As the plane plummeted, he aimed directly at Lark. "You'll never find them," he snarled. Before he could pull the trigger, the plane hit something, a tree, perhaps, and lurched violently to one side. Not Merrick was thrown against the wall. The gun flew from his hand. The last thing Lark saw before everything went black was the other plane, still following them down, its lights steady in the darkness. Pain was the first thing Lark felt when she regained consciousness. A dull throb in her head, sharp stabs in her left arm. She opened her eyes to blurry darkness, the smell of fuel and wet earth filling her nostrils. "She's awake," a voice said. A woman's voice, unfamiliar. A light shone in Lark's eyes. She winced and turned away, pupils reactive. "Good sign." The light withdrew. "Can you tell me your name?" "Lark Davies," she mumbled. Her mouth felt dry, her lips cracked. "Good. Do you remember what happened?" The memories came rushing back. The plane, Not Merrick with his gun, the sudden descent. "We crashed," she said, trying to sit up. Pain shot through her arm. "Where are Howard and Teo?" "Your friends are alive," the woman assured her. "The older man has a broken leg, and the younger one has some cuts and bruises, but they'll be okay." As Lark's vision cleared, she saw she was in some kind of tent. Emergency lanterns cast a soft glow over medical equipment and supplies. The woman speaking to her wore a flight suit with a patch Lark couldn't quite make out. "Who are you?" Lark asked. "Captain Sonia Wilson, Civil Air Patrol. We were tracking your plane after it sent out distress signals." She helped Lark sit up, adjusting a makeshift splint on her arm. "You've got a hairline fracture in your radius, but it's a clean break. The other plane, the one following us, that was us," Captain Wilson explained. "We spotted your aircraft flying erratically and tried to make contact. When you didn't respond to radio calls, we stayed with you." "And the man who was with us claimed to be Merrick?" Captain Wilson's expression darkened. "We found him in the wreckage. He didn't make it." Lark felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that the imposter was no longer a threat, but disappointment that he'd taken his secrets with him. "There's someone who wants to see you," Captain Wilson added. "He says he knows you, or at least knows about you. Says it's urgent." "Who?" "An older gentleman. Arrived about an hour after we found you. Knew exactly where the crash site was, which is strange because we're in a pretty remote area of the Alleghenies." Lark felt a flicker of hope. "Can I see him?" Captain Wilson nodded and stepped outside the tent. A moment later, the flap opened, and an elderly man entered. He moved slowly, leaning on a cane, but his eyes were alert and kind. Lark recognized him immediately from the photograph in Merrick's hidden room. "Elias Calloway," she whispered. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. At 82, his hair was thin and white, his face deeply lined, but she could still see traces of the man from the photograph taken in 1983. "Hello, Lark," he said, his voice rough with age. "You look so much like your mother." Tears filled Lark's eyes. After all this time, all the searching, here was the man at the center of the mystery. The father who had taken his family and disappeared 40 years ago. "How did you find me?" she asked. "The twins told me where you'd be," Elias replied simply, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "They've been watching over you since you found the photograph in your grandmother's attic." "Watching over me how?" "They're across the country. Distance doesn't matter to them. Not anymore." Elias sat carefully on a folding chair beside her cot. Their abilities have grown over the years, evolved in ways the project never anticipated. "Are they okay?" "The texts said they were in danger." "They are. That's why I'm here." Elias glanced toward the tent entrance. "We don't have much time." The man who called himself Merrick. His real name was Clark Harding. He was one of the original Project Echo scientists. They sent him to intercept you before you could find the real Merrick or the twins. Where is the real Merrick? In a secure facility in Northern California. The twins have been trying to reach him telepathically, but they're being blocked somehow. Elias leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Now that you have the evidence from the lake, we have a chance to expose everything. To finally end Project Echo before Phase 3 begins." Captain Wilson returned with a thermos of hot tea. Elias fell silent until she left again. "The crash site is secure," he continued once they were alone, "but they'll be searching for survivors. We need to move as soon as you're strong enough." "Where are Howard and Tio?" Lark asked. "I need to see them." "They're in another tent. The rescue crew is small, just Captain Wilson and 3 others. Good people, but they don't know what they've stumbled into." Lark took a sip of tea, gathering her thoughts. "In the plane, before we crashed, the fake Merrick, Harding, said the project wasn't about mind control. It was about prediction, using the twins to foresee market changes, elections, world events." Elias nodded slowly. "That was one purpose, but not the only one. Not the worst one." "Then what were they really planning? What did the twins see?" Elias took a deep breath. "Have you heard of the frequency 2222354? Lark startled. "It was in the music box. I figured out it was a radio frequency." "Not just any frequency. In 1983, Dr. Wolcott discovered that certain sound frequencies, properly amplified and directed, could enhance or suppress psychic abilities in subjects like the twins. The frequency 22354 worked as an amplifier, making receivers more sensitive, more powerful. That's what Willa hid in the music box," Lark realized. "The frequency they used on the twins." Yes, but there was more. In their final test session, Penny and Percy were connected to Wolcott while he was using the frequency amplifier. Instead of just reading his current thoughts, they saw something buried deep in his mind. His ultimate plan for Project Echo. Elias's hands trembled slightly as he continued. Wolcott believed that with the right frequency and powerful enough receivers, they could do more than just read or influence minds. They could synchronize them, create a network of connected consciousness. Thousands, maybe millions of people, linked through specially conditioned receivers like the twins. "To what end?" Lark asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "Control," Elias said simply. "Total control. Not just predicting behavior, but directing it. Creating what Wolcott called unified social consciousness. A world where dissent and conflict would be eliminated because everyone would think the same thoughts. want the same things. Mind control on a massive scale, Lark whispered. More, like mind homogenization, the ultimate solution to social discord. Elias's voice was heavy with decades of fear, and the twins were to be the conduits, the central nodes in this network of controlled minds. That's what you were running from. Yes. When Penny and Percy told us what they'd seen in Woolcott's mind, we knew we had to get them away. Their abilities were already growing too strong. The headaches, the nosebleeds, their brains were changing, adapting to receive more and more information. But why is this happening again now? After 40 years? Because technology has finally caught up to Woolcott's vision, Elias explained. In 1983, it was just a theory. Today, with advances in neuroscience, communications technology, and AI, it's become possible. Phase 3 isn't a continuation of the old project. It's the fulfillment of it. Lark thought of the texts from P somehow reaching her even when normal communications were impossible. The twins, they're more powerful now, aren't they? Far more than Woolcott ever imagined. That's why they had to separate after we escaped. Together, their abilities were too strong, too noticeable. Apart, they could pass as normal, with just occasional intuitions or lucky guesses. But they're still connected, always. Distance means nothing to true receivers. Elias smiled, sadly. They've been watching over our family all these years. Watching over you. Me? Why me? Because your mother made them promise. Before she died, Christine told the twins that someday her daughter would discover the truth, that you would finish what she started. Tears filled Lark's eyes again. She knew they would kill her? She saw it, Elias confirmed gently. Just as the twins saw what would happen if Project Echo succeeded. A world without true freedom of thought, without individuality, a human hive mind controlled by whoever controlled the network. The tent flap opened and Howard entered, leaning on crutches, his right leg in a splint. His face was bruised, but his eyes widened when he saw Elias. "My God," he whispered. "It's really you." Elias stood to greet him. "Howard Martinez, you've grown old, my friend." "Not as gracefully as you," Howard replied with a pained smile. "Teo's coming. They're just changing his bandages." Once Teo joined them, Elias explained everything again. Project Echo's true purpose, the twins' growing abilities, and the urgent need to expose the program before Phase 3 could begin. "So, what's the plan?" Teo asked. "Where do we go from here?" "First, we need to get the evidence to safety," Elias said. "The metal box, the documents you found in the fake Merrick's house. Everything." Lark's heart sank. "The metal box was with me on the plane. I don't know where it is now." "Captain Wilson has it," Elias assured her. "Along with your bag. They recovered them from the wreckage." "And then what?" Howard asked. "Where are the twins?" "Percy is no longer in Canada. He sensed they were coming, for him, and moved to a safe location. Penny left Florida 3 days ago." Elias looked at each of them in turn. They're both heading to the one place where Phase 3 can be stopped, Washington, D.C. They'll meet us there. "Us?" Lark asked. "Yes. You three, me, and the real Daniel Merrick, if the twins can help us find and free him." Elias's expression was resolute. "Together, with the evidence you've gathered and what Merrick has accumulated over the years, we can expose everything. Take it to people who can shut down the project permanently." "Won't they try to stop us?" Teo asked. "They already are," Elias replied grimly. The fake Merrick was just the beginning. Once they realize he failed, they'll send others. As if on cue, the sound of helicopter rotors thudded in the distance. "That's not rescue," Howard said, moving to the tent entrance. "Too soon, and coming from the wrong direction." Elias nodded, unsurprised. "They're tracking us. We need to move. Now." Despite her pain, Lark stood, testing her balance. "What about Captain Wilson and her team?" "They'll be fine as long as they don't interfere," Elias said. "These people don't kill unnecessarily. Too messy, too many questions. They want us and the evidence. Nothing else matters to them." Howard returned from checking outside. The helicopter's landing about half a mile north. 4, maybe 5 people getting out. Elias pointed to the south. "There's an old fire road about a quarter mile that way. I have a vehicle waiting." "You came prepared," Teo observed. "The twins saw this coming," Elias replied simply. "They see many things now." As they hurriedly gathered their belongings and the precious evidence, Lark's phone chimed with another impossible text. "They're closer than you think. The leader sees through others' eyes. Don't trust anyone who looks confused. We'll meet where it all began. P&P." "Both twins sent this," Lark said, showing Elias the message. "What does it mean? The leader sees through others' eyes." "Big phase 3, Elias whispered, his face paling. "They've already started testing. The project leader, Wolcott's successor, must be using the first successful transceiver." "Someone who can see through other people's eyes?" Howard asked skeptically. "Not just see. Experience. Control to some extent." Elias looked deeply troubled. "If they've already created a working transceiver, we have even less time than I thought." They slipped out of the tent into the cool night air. The rescue camp was small, just 4 tents and 2 vehicles on a relatively flat section of forest. Captain Wilson was checking supplies in one of the vehicles, her back to them. "This way," Elias whispered, leading them toward the trees. "Stay low and quiet." They moved as quickly as their injuries allowed, Lark supporting Howard while Teo carried their bags. The helicopter noise had stopped, replaced by an ominous silence. In the darkness beneath the trees, Lark felt a strange sensation, as if someone else was looking through her eyes, seeing what she saw. She stopped, disoriented. "Lark?" Teo whispered. "What's wrong?" "Someone's watching," she managed to say. "Through me." Elias grabbed her arm. "Fight it. Push back with your mind. Your mother could do it. You can too." Lark closed her eyes, imagining walls around her thoughts, her awareness. The invasive feeling receded, then disappeared. "They know we're here," she gasped. "They're using someone to find us." From behind them came shouting, then the crack of a gunshot. Not aimed at them. A warning shot, perhaps. "Run!" Elias urged. They fled through the forest, branches whipping at their faces, roots threatening to trip them with every step. Lark's arm throbbed, and Howard struggled with his crutches, but fear drove them forward. After what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, they reached the fire road, a narrow dirt track cutting through the trees. Parked under the overhanging branches was an old Jeep. "Get in," Elias directed, taking the driver's seat. The engine started on the first try, and they lurched forward along the rough road. "Where are we going?" Lark asked, clutching her injured arm as the Jeep bounced over ruts and rocks. "Where it all began," Elias replied, repeating the twins' message. "Pinewood Creek, the only place where everything can end, too." As they drove through the night, Lark thought about everything she'd learned, about Project Echo, about her mother, about the twins who could reach across miles to send messages and see through others' eyes. The world had suddenly become both more miraculous and more terrifying than she'd ever imagined. The metal box sat on her lap, containing the evidence that could expose a 40-year conspiracy. Beside it, the music box continued its silent vigil, its hidden message finally understood. "Will we make it in time?" she asked Elias. The old man's hands were steady on the wheel, his eyes focused on the dark road ahead. "The twins believe we will," he said. "And after all these years, I've learned to trust what they see." Behind them, lights appeared on the road, vehicles in pursuit. But ahead, the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky, promising a new day. "Get ready," Elias said. "The final battle for your mother's truth, for everyone's freedom, is about to begin." That's the end of this story. I hope you enjoyed this journey of mystery and suspense. Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more intriguing stories like this one. Don't forget to share with your friends and family to spread kindness and awareness. Your support helps this channel continue creating the content you love. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.